So, welcome everyone. Today, Mike Sgro, who is the owner of Michael Sgro Leadership Coaching, will be moderating the session and talking to us about thriving in year end. So, we're really excited to have you here. He's a certified professional coach, an advocate, a performance expert, and empathic leader. He coaches professionals to improve their overall effectiveness, leadership skills, career readiness, digital savvy, and so much more. He's also a co-chair of the Downtown Syracuse Champions and president of the board at Sustainability for Scholarships and a board member at the Friends of Rosamond Gifford Zoo. So everyone give it up for Mike Sgro.
Stop it, sit down, sit down. This is, I'm gonna share my screen and we'll get started. I've got, as some of you know me, a lot to say. What I'm excited about especially is that I've presented with the AFP now over 20 times in different regional chapters across the state, including a chapter out west. And so this is exciting for me to just be able to do this today. And my background is also in fundraising. And so I'm gonna be able to answer a lot of questions about sort of thinking about year end from a technical perspective, like really looking at the what's, but I wanna spend the first few minutes talking really about your how. So thinking about emotional intelligence and seeing that as your how to sort of proceed for the end of the year. And then we could talk a little bit about some of the what's, all right? Because I know all of you know your why, and I know you all know your who, but I want to talk about how today. So frame our conversation around how, and it's going to be using emotional intelligence. And a few of you have seen some of these slides before. I always start any training or conversation about a skill with the Dunning-Kruger effect, because I want to make sure that you all know coming into this conversation that you understand what the Dunning-Kruger effect is. And we all face this, okay? So it's an effect that we all face on our competencies and skills. And there's three main factors when it comes to the Dunning-Kruger effect. And basically, it's not knowing what we don't know. So like, how do you know what you don't know? All right, and this is the effect that you need to understand so that you can constantly be learning and seeking feedback to develop your skills and competencies, okay? But there's usually three different types. The first type is this high line, the first line that you see that's really high in confidence, but very low in terms of experience, virtually none. So this is where people say things like, I know more than the generals, right? When you know they don't have any military experience and they can't possibly know more than generals, okay? And I'm not making a political comment, it's just a good example of Dunning-Kruger effect. So this is where any of us could think that we're highly competent in something, but not actually have the expertise, okay? A second type, which is this line in the middle here, where the person will have a favorable amount of experience in something, but they lack confidence, okay? So this might mean someone say something like, you know, I know enough to be dangerous, or yeah, I could do that project, but you know, I don't have a long history with this. It's just that they lack confidence, not necessarily experience. And then there's a third type, which is this line over here, where someone does have a good deal of confidence and expertise in something, but they have another blind spot, which is just assuming that everyone who's working with them knows the same things. Mm-hmm. Okay? And that I want you to really consider as we have this conversation today about your strategies for year end. You may be suffering from a blind spot of thinking that everyone around you in your organization knows what you know, which is why it's hard sometimes to get buy-in from other people, because we have to do some training or education around some of these strategies that we might be proposing, because you might be an expert in it, doesn't mean everyone else is. And so we have to give voice to those sort of things. So I just mentioned this as a concept, because you're probably going to hear something in the next few minutes that you may not understand. One is you're capable of doing it, okay, but it might be new to you. But what's happening and what you're feeling is the Dunning-Kruger effect, okay? You just didn't know before now, and that's okay, all right? So this just is something to kind of understand. Anytime that you do any skill and competency development, it's important to know this effect. Anyone have a question about that? Okay. So let's talk about some emotional intelligence. So when I talked to Danielle about what the topic was going to be for tonight, I thought this made perfect sense given all that's going on. And what's interesting about emotional intelligence, I said to Danielle when she got on the call, was that it's not a switch we can flip on and off. Okay, you either have it or you don't. It's a habit or it's not. Okay, it is something that you can develop, and all of you will increase your emotional intelligence just by engaging on some of the topics that we're going to talk about. Okay, but let me just give you the definition as said by Travis Bradbury and Gene Greaves. They have a book called Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And they say the definition is the capacity of individuals to recognize their own emotions and those of others, discern between different feelings and label them appropriately. And I will probably also add accurately. Using this information, emotional information, to guide thinking and behavior and manage and or adjust emotions to adapt to environments to achieve one's goal. So now that I said that, why is this important? And share with me too, like what primed you to join tonight's conversation too, sort of why you're here and why do you think EI is important? Anyone want to share?
We need to raise a lot of money this quarter, Michael. And so having my staff learn or having me bring some information to them might help them is going to help us big time.
Great. What else?
For me, it's the sustainability of the upside down nature of COVID and how we're operating. And even when we're successful, we don't want to lose that. And I feel like there are days that I'm on and days that I'm off, but identifying when it's me and when I'm missing, when I'm perceiving things wrong, or when there are things happening, not work related with my team, but that's impacting them, I want to be empathetic and supportive, but then also successful, right? Well, raise the money that we need to keep moving forward. So
that's right.
Right. And the other thing going on right now due to COVID, the need on us is so much more. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, we have a 350% increase in our food pantry. I mean, you just name it. The demand for our services are just through the roof, and and contracts don't cover all that.
True.
That's right. So what I could share, just speaking to all that and just sort of the extraordinary time, is that whatever you've done in the past is not going to work. Whatever you've done in the past is not going to work. And I'm confident in that. The human condition is being tapped in ways that we probably never thought possible, because we have predominantly access to information in real time. And as a result, managing our feelings is a lot harder than it was 100 years ago, okay? Because we instantly know and see some horrific things that are traumatizing on a video, right, from around the world. So when we think about the day and age of what we're living, not just in our own country, but access to information, feeling management is so important now. And I can tell you that most of the issues that we're going to talk about today have to do with you and not anybody else, because I know all of you are likely very empathetic and kind to other people, but and in the community. But unless you take care of yourself, you cannot get more. You cannot raise more dollars. You can't have more love in the office. You just can't. So the thing that you can control and work on right now is what's going on in your internal experience. Okay. And I'll share a little bit about empathy in a bit, but I want you to stay focused on your internal experience. And we're going to talk about some strategies on how to manage that more effectively, which again, isn't the actual fundraising. It isn't the actual email sending. It's not the conversation with your boss. It has all to do with you, okay? But the tendency of do-gooders in nonprofits is to take care of everyone else, right? Christine's laughing because she's heard me say this 1,000 times. So here's why EI is important. It's widely recognized as a valuable skill that helps us improve in communication, management, problem solving, and relationships within the workplace. It's also a skill that researchers believe can be improved with training and practice. And all of you are going to be able to activate just this much more of it today, right now, because you're going to become aware of the tenets of emotional intelligence and derive some value for them. And when we value something, that means we do it. And so you will increase your performance immediately. Here are the 4 components of emotional intelligence. And please interrupt me with questions or thoughts as I'm speaking. I want to make sure I share the information, but I want you to be engaged with the information and the things I'm talking about. So the 4 things are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Oftentimes, emotional intelligence is equated to just empathy, right? And so we always talk about it. You see a lot of great examples of it online where empathy comes up and it's talked about as emotional intelligence. These first 2 buckets, the self-awareness and self-management, are its own competency, okay? Personal competency and emotional intelligence are the first 2 things. And social competence are the 2 second things, social awareness and relationship management, okay? So when folks do assessments in this, you actually, and I know a few of you have done this, you get 7 scores, okay? So you have an overall score of emotional intelligence, 2 scores in the 2 competency buckets, and then these individual 4 scores, okay? So if anyone is doing that kind of work, know that there's one number isn't reflective of everything because of these various components of emotional intelligence. I'm going to focus largely on the first 2 buckets for this conversation. I will talk about the second 2, but the first 2 are so important to what we're talking about. And in order for me to meet the goal of the title of this conversation, Thriving Year End, okay, means it has to be about you. All right, and those are the first 2 buckets. All right, so self-awareness is described as emotional self-awareness. So its name is its definition, okay? Being aware of your feelings, but not just aware of them, actually accurately describing what they are. All right, now if you're not good at this, you don't know the difference between sad and tired because they can feel very much alike. All right. So when we're not good at accurately describing or understanding our feelings, we might go to bed when we're sad and talk to a friend when we're tired. Right. So see the strategies being flip-flopped and they may work, but you want to align the practices to the feelings. Otherwise, the feelings won't go away. They'll stay with you. All right. This is the part where I say that feelings aren't facts. And I know that's a hard thing to hear today, okay, because of all that's going on, but feelings aren't facts. Your feeling isn't a fact. It's valuable data. It's information and it's real, okay? So don't confuse facts not being real. Feelings are real, but they're emotional data. They're data bytes and they're flashing lights, according to Dr. Susan David, who wrote a book called Emotional Agility. And we'll talk a little bit about what she says in a minute. And they're trying to tell you something, okay? But you're supposed to investigate, all right? A lot of us who do hard work, particularly in nonprofit, don't investigate. We go do the work and solve things with other people, all right? So in order for all of you to thrive year end, I want you to consider how you're feeling, accurately identifying those feelings and making sure that you're acting in your values. Acting in your values. Each of you at your nonprofit have values. Use those as your governing principles for actions because they will quell the feelings that you're having. But if you take the feelings that you're having and acting in those feelings, that's where things are going to head south and it's going to be less effective. So if you're angry, acting angry is not a solution, not for someone who's emotionally intelligent. They accurately identify I'm angry or I feel angry. Why am I angry? And now I'm going to take action based on my value. I'm angry at my boss because they missed the fact that this donor did X, Y, and Z, and they told me to send them a card. They never sent them a card. Now I got to send them a card. I know all the things you all do. All right. And so that could be very frustrating, but the value action step might be going to talk to your boss saying, hey, I've noticed a few times these cards are not going out. What do you think we should do about our process? Should I sign the cards to send them out? How best can I help you in support of our donors, right? That's a very different conversation than just huffing around the office or on Zoom with your boss who disappointed you, right? But you took some sort of action, but again, based on your values. Now that action step is difficult, all right? And that's what self-management skills are, all right? That's the ability to control and regulate our feelings, be adaptable, have what's called an achievement orientation, like you know what the goal is and you're resilient and you push through to achieve it, and have a positive outlook. Let me share something about positive outlook that I didn't understand a few years ago, and I have a different take on this now. Because a lot of people have said to me, you know, you're so positive, that's really nice and all that great stuff. Okay. But there are times where I'm not positive outright. Okay. Self-management skills is having a positive outlook. It means what's happening inside Mike Sgro is I have the ability to look at the future and say, it's going to be okay. That's a positive outlook, and that's what self-management skills helps us with. It doesn't mean me saying the words or talking to someone about that or being relentlessly positive. It just means that I am controlling my inner experience, and I believe that things are going to be better. I'm going to win this week. We're going to move forward this week. We're going to have a great year end. Because if you don't believe it, guess what? It's probably not going to happen, right? You have to be the truest believer of the things. And if you can get yourself in that space, and again, all the things I'm saying take effort if this isn't a muscle that is rehearsed, okay? So it does take time, and now's a good time to start practicing, right? Now's a good time. Any questions about these components of sort of the personal competencies or thoughts that you have so far?
It's funny because in looking at this again, I wrote down positive outlook because I've struggled with that on and off since March. Hearing you say that it doesn't mean everything has to be roses is really helpful. I'm wondering if you have any tools in your little tool belt when you're feeling like you need to almost give yourself that internal pep talk or kind of reinvigorate that confidence and that prospect for the future. Do you have any
Yeah. The quick answer is self-talk. So you just said it. You said, what do I tell myself? Well, it's having a conversation with you. And it would be coming up with mantras or repeating back the values that you have.
Okay.
And those could be your organizational values. Those could be your personal values, right? All we're talking about here with self-awareness, self-management is what's going on with you. This is really hard to get if you've not practiced this work, because most of us are used to solving things by interacting with it and making someone happy as a result, whether that's the donor, the executive director, what have you, right? But we're only talking about this first step about what's going on in you. So self-talk is incredibly helpful. I have to use self-talk every single day because every single day I'm triggered, all right? Now, all of you probably, some of you might say, you're triggered? I never see you do that. Yes, that's right, because I have a lot of self-talk to talk me off the ledge so that I don't act emotionally about whatever I've experienced, right? One trigger of mine, and I've told you a few of you this, is whenever I walk to work every day, I might see somebody and say good morning to them. And if they don't say good morning back, I get triggered. I'm like, but I'm a nice person. How come you're not saying good morning back, right? And then I have to say self-talk. I'm like, maybe they don't speak English. Maybe they just lost a parent. Maybe they're rushing. And guess what, Mike Sgro, maybe they're not interested. Okay. I have to say that to myself because my feeling is hijacking my thinking. Okay. And I can't let it do that because that's very primordial of us to let the feeling become the directive. All right. So when I use my insights and I process what's happening, I'm able to talk myself off the ledge and just continue walking to work. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't stop me from saying good morning to people. It just means I don't have to be married to an outcome of someone saying good morning back. Okay. Or that they even have any interest or care. I'm not going to change my disposition on being friendly because I don't get it back, right? That would be very nefarious, right? There doesn't need to be the case. I could just be happy-go-lucky and call it a day. I don't have to have a win every time I say good morning, all right? But again, it's self-talk. That's the number one gift you can give yourself that will allow you to kind of look at and examine your feelings and then what to do with it, all right? And sometimes inaction is also an action, right? So if we get hot about something, maybe not saying something the moment we think of it is probably a good idea. And in order to do that, you have to use some self-talk, okay? Very quickly, these other two competencies, social awareness is empathy, and I'm going to give you a very specific empathic communication practice to use. And you could use this in all the ways, right? In your conversations internally, when you write donor letters, when you're posting on Facebook, it'll work every single time. And in relationship management, I want you really to consider the influence piece of relationship management. A lot of fundraisers in particular are very good about being direct. They're able to meet with the donor, say, give me $1 million, you know, yada, yada, or the grant or whatever it is you're pursuing. Influence is a different skill, okay? That's not direct behavior, it's indirect behavior. You have to sell giving as the cool thing to do in your organization, right? That's an indirect behavior. That's influence. That's just one example of influence, all right? And I'm not thinking Kylie Jenner influence either. I'm talking about real influence, right? Where we get people to do things, right, in support of us, but we never told them to, okay? So when you share testimonials, when you do all the feel good, goodwill stuff, that's very important. That's gonna be even more important this year than ever, right? If you keep on sending emails the last number of weeks to year end asking for money, and there is no influencing activity coming out of your shop, Molly, you in danger, girl, okay? You're not gonna be successful, all right? You have to combat the idea of being direct, even though it's successful and getting some money, that you're playing the bigger game here and gonna act with influence and inspire people. All right. And that's what extraordinary people who do relationship management very well can achieve. Okay. But think of this as its own skill, as part of emotional intelligence. It's not the hard skills I'm talking about, even though I'm using some examples of year-end giving and emails. I'm not talking about how to do that stuff. I'm talking about being able to be creative, to use all the tools at your discipline to produce outcomes that are influencing and creating inspiration, okay? But you have to be that in order to transmit that, okay? And again, I'll go back to the self-awareness, self-management piece. If you can't achieve that inner experience, you're not gonna have capacity to do the things I'm talking about. You're gonna be burnt out, you're gonna be stressed out because you're ignoring how you feel. You have to embrace that and start acting in your values, and you will be able to do all the great things I know all of you know how to do to produce the outcomes that you're looking for in your organization. Just as a quick thought, emotional intelligence is a process. And so while I talked about each of these elements as this linear experience, they actually work like this as a process, all right? So we move from self-awareness to self-management, social awareness, and then to relationship management. All right. And the difference between self-awareness and self-management is the difference between an electron and a proton. Okay. It's very small. So that's why this is a process, even though they're inherently different habits or sort of different skill sets, okay? But it works as like a family. They work together. I want to go back to feeling management and give you this as an exercise so that you can also train this and teach this to others that you work with. So this is really the process. And I alluded to it earlier with feelings being data points. And then we want to go through a process of understanding and accurately describing our feelings, right? Labeling our feelings, and then being able to take some sort of action, but it's based on your values. So the word discernment may not be the word you use, but I'll just say that there's a space between you feeling something and you doing something, okay? And that space is this discernment. And if you haven't done so, take stock of your values at work and make sure that you all as a group, as a team, or even if you're a one-person shop, understand those values and understand how they work, because they will guide you forward. Especially, I know when you are all dealing with outside constituents, whether they're partners, donors, supporters of any sort, I know that all of you rise to the occasion to make those situations great and good and work for the greater organization. We want to apply those same values to our internal audiences as well. Okay, it just doesn't, I know all of you could have a great conversation with a donor, but imagine have that great conversation with a colleague with the same kind of zest. I call this internal public relations. And it's a great way to sort of frame the work, especially all of you do as outside external people, and take your expertise in building relationships on the inside. All right. Now, you won't be able to achieve that unless you're doing feeling management. Okay. Because if you're not managing your feelings, that's going to be hard to do because people at work drive us nuts. Right. So we have to get our internal experience together. So this is the process. Feelings are data. The space in between the action is discernment. Identify what you're feeling, and then take some sort of action. Think of this process as emotional plumbing, okay? And all of us need it. And I'm going to say something controversial. There's lots of conversation, particularly right now, about self-care. Self-care is lovely, but self-care is an activity outside of emotional intelligence. Self-management skills is your emotional plumbing. And the reason I say that is that it's real time. Self-care is a decision to go beyond, to do something to take care of yourself. I'm proposing to you that emotional intelligence, self-management skills takes care of things in real time as it's happening, okay? That's the system that most of us are missing, okay? And because we live in a very capitalistic society, a lot of self-care businesses are trying to tell you otherwise. You need a massage. Yes, you might need a massage, but you don't need a massage because you hate your boss. You can deal with those feelings about your boss right now by having this emotional plumbing put in. Okay. And I no disrespect to businesses. I support businesses, but what I'm saying is that there's a very corporate understanding about how we talk about self-care and getting likes and all this stuff. It's not completely accurate. Emotional intelligence is separate and apart from that. And it's the human, it takes care of the human condition, not just our muscles and all those things. And again, no disrespect to self-care activities, but they're not the same as this. This is required if you're going to do more at work and be more effective and thrive for year end. Because what you all do is very difficult. And Will spoke to that earlier with the amount of money that they need to raise, right? And the only way that we're going to be able to do that is to take care of ourselves in real time so that we can deal with the reality of the end of the year, right? Right now we're riding the rapids. And if we don't know how to ride the rapids, you're not going to make enough money by year end, right? So we have to do two things. We have to take care of ourselves and do our work. You could do your work more effectively with higher EI. And this is a key piece of it. I'll just share this really quickly because I don't want to leave time for questions. The reason we get stuck in this, it's primordial. It's basic human behavior. The limbic system is the base of our brain, all right? This is the thing that we had as cave people back in the day, all right? It was the first part of our brain. So when there was like a lion running after us, we would run, all right? That's the limbic system, okay? It's designed to protect us, okay? Think of it, so I've upgraded the biology and I call it the autocorrect system, okay? So all of you know when you do something on autocorrect and it doesn't do it the way that you really want, you're like, my God, this is supposed to be autocorrect. Doesn't it know better, right? And sometimes it gets things wrong, right? The limbic system is our autocorrect, okay? And it's unconscious. It's unconscious. We don't have buttons on the side of our head to change our unconscious behavior, all right? So its response functions are fight, flight, and freeze. Okay, so if you find yourself fighting, running away, or freezing, it's likely that you're not taking your feelings and doing that discernment step. Okay, discernment happens in the prefrontal lobe. That's where problem solving happens. All right, so this is just a bit of biology so that you understand why it happens. All of us are human, as far as I know, and so this is a human response. So that's why emotional intelligence as its own competency has to be something that you train and learn, develop as a habit so that you can combat that, all right? Because all of you are gonna have a lot of big goals by the end of the year. I'm positive of that. And the way that you're gonna be able to do that is to really process how you feel, right? And not let the limbic system take over. It just hijacks our thinking. And so when you don't know that you don't know this, right, Dunning-Kruger effect, then you think, well, this is normal. This is the way it is. And I just have to get better at wrestling with these situations or these difficult people. No, you have to also look at what's going on in your internal experience so that you can be competitive to meet these risky, tough, hard situations that you're all facing. Because those things aren't going to go away, right? Donors are being much more selective about what they're giving to. There's less money to go around for all these wonderful nonprofits. So the only thing that is going to get a bigger piece of the pie is you and your best practices. But you're not going to be available for that without working on what's going on inside. And that's why EI is so incredibly important. Research now shows that those with higher EI will run circles around those with higher IQ. Okay, so you can have 15 PhDs, someone has high EI. From a performance standpoint, they will run circles around you. All right, because simply having knowledge does not make you intelligent. All right, when we're talking about performance, we're talking about success, the human condition, we need to look at EI. I'll send you all these steps because I want to spend more time talking to you all about questions that you have and some of the what's for year end and questions about those things. But Dr. Susan David has a wonderful TED Talk that you should watch, about 17 minutes long, about emotional intelligence. And she's got this book. I get no royalties from this, so if you get the book, I get no money. But if you go to her website, she has these 4 key steps. And it's basically a lot more eloquent than how I just described these steps. I'm very direct about how I say it. Her biggest piece is in the stepping out, the detaching part, where she talks about you being not one piece on the chessboard, but the entire chessboard. Okay, you have more opportunities to deal with your feelings than you're giving yourself permission to. All right, so I'll share these 4 steps in the presentation. I'll hand it off to you all to share, but you can look it up on her website as well. Just to go back to those self-management skills, here are some key terms to think about. And Christine, this goes to your question about what exactly can I do on the inside? So self-talk is certainly a big one. Being mindful, demonstrating perseverance, literally managing your emotions, right? So that when you hear some information, you're not reacting immediately to it. Being self-motivated is where I would put that self-talk, because that's you could be your own cheerleader. Showing resilience, right? That you can push through, and thinking positively or having that positive outlook. These are all affective skills, all right? There's tons of work and free YouTube videos on affective skills, okay? So if you're struggling yourself on managing the state of mind, find topics like these to get some lessons, practices down, all right? And Will, this is great stuff for trainings or sharing TED Talks or any kind of learning videos for teams as well, because any of these topics are what the affective skills are. And that's really what self-management is. So think of self-awareness as the labeling and identifying, and self-management is the action step. Well, how do I take care of now what I understand to be true? Okay. Quick example, you probably have seen things like this before, but again, like when we're triggered, we want to do situation 2. Okay, situation 1, and I know all of you do this already. You would do situation 2 every single time with someone on the outside of your organization, no question. But we need to do situation 2 on the inside in our organization as well. Okay, so situation 1 is someone says something to offend us, we fire right back. The situation escalates. Okay, now it's just expanding the issue, and it's going to be a lot harder to solve. And the second issue is now we're not getting along, right? So not having a strong relationship with our colleague means we're going to have to work harder by the year end, okay? Because we need each other. We need each other. And so doing situation 1 is not going to help us. Situation 2, someone says something to offend us, you give a soft answer, kind words, an apology, an invitation to resolve without drama, all right? Here's the big deal, and I had to learn this lesson the hard way many, many a times for me to finally learn it, is that I'm not always right. Oh, I know, shocking, but true. I'm not always right, right? And a lot of times what happens at work,
I believe that.
what happens at work is that we're getting into these wars about being right, right? Is right more important than having a relationship with your colleague, right? Is it? And is the goal to build understanding versus agreement? And I would argue that understanding is much more effective a strategy than agreement. We cannot go through life only agreeing with the people we agree with and then just move in another direction with people who agree with us, right? That's not really learning, and that's not, I know all of you are in organizations that have a cause, and you're trying to build understanding in the communities, right, to get support. So I know that you know how to do that. So what we all need to be is good role models in our organizations so that we can train this and teach this to other people, all right? But you need more understanding. Understanding is key. Situation 2 is likely, the response was to build understanding. Okay, so frame that as what the response was. Danielle, tell me more about what your thoughts are there. That seems, I never did it that way. That's really interesting. Tell me more about that. That's very different than wrong. We're not doing it that way, right? Like that's, why would we do that? That's just very unkind, right? It's better like for us to see ourselves as mentors to each other in the workplace, no matter what our titles are. Because then we can really unpack and learn from each other without wanting to prove something beyond that, okay? I promised you one empathic empathy tool. Daniel Goleman is a authority on emotional intelligence, and he talks about there's 3 types of empathy: cognitive, emotional, and compassion. He doesn't use the word compassion. If you ever asked him, he uses another term, but I'm like, that's compassion. So I took some liberty here. But the way I break this down is I see you, I feel you, I help you. If every time we communicate with another human being on anything at work, at home, in life, we can do one of these 3 responses or combination, you will be more effective. I guarantee it. This is empathy as a strategy. So when you think about the letters that you're going to be sending out, the social media posts, the conversations with donors, I see you, I feel you, I help you should be your self-talk. I see you, I feel you, I help you. These three types of empathy will create understanding, raise more money, feel more enriching, and get faster buy-in. Okay? And this works for day-to-day conversation as well as your work proper, like in solicitations and things like that. I see you, I feel you, I help you. Let me give you an example. I might have said, Christine and I might be working on something and she might have told me a story and I'm like, oh, I see that. Totally get that. Thank you, Christine, for sharing that, okay? That's a very cognitive response. Emotional is, oh, Christine, I get that. You know, that happened to me too. And it was a real struggle. I feel you, sister, okay? Third, I help you. Oh, Christine, that's crazy. It happened to me too. I feel you, sister. Here's what I did about it though. Do you want me to help? Right? So think of this modulation of using these is a tool in your communication practices. It's what people can receive. People can receive empathy, okay? And remember we talked earlier about direct behavior versus indirect behavior. If you want to have influence, you've got to use these tools, okay? And they're more indirect than they are direct. So that might feel like a little bit of effort to get this sort of started, but it is effective. And the last thing I'd say about emotional and compassion is the two traps. Emotional empathy can be a trap if it turns into commiseration or that you get more stressed out than the person upset. Okay, so if someone loses their mother and then you're more upset about them losing their mother, then that's going to be incongruent with that person. Okay, I gave you a stark example. What I'm saying is that you can get lost in emotion. It's what's called over-identifying. If you over-identify, you've gone too far. All right, and compassion is only compassion if the other person agrees to the help. Okay, so if I said to Danielle, you need to do this, I'm trying to help you, she's not going to hear that. She's going to say, take a hike, right? Compassion is, Danielle, hey, this is what I think, you know, and I could be helpful this way, up to you. You let me know if I could ever help out, right? That gives the other person the control, and that's what makes it an act of compassion. When we insist, we take away compassion. And now it's another ugly, gross thing. It's something else. It's not empathy, okay? I just wanted to mention those traps because I know a lot of you use empathy properly every single day, but there are some traps in these too that it can go too far and then not produce the goal that you want. These are 3 questions that Rosalind Torres, who is a leadership guru, talks about when we're thinking about relationships and leadership. And I want all of you to consider these questions as you think about year end and as you think about 2021. And she did a lot of research to come up with these 3 questions for organizations. Where are you looking to anticipate change, right? Those people who didn't anticipate a pandemic, now we need to start anticipating things in the future, right? If we didn't think a pandemic could strike, right? And so some of us were caught unprepared, right? Now that we've had a pandemic, we must be the most prepared group of people ever, right? So what are the things that are changing in the landscape? What are the things that you're seeing in your industry, in your cause, that gives you pause and start thinking about how you're going to adapt to those things now, right? Start having conversations now. Don't just think about year end and fundraising goal, right? What's your theme for next year, January 1? Right? How are you going to go about doing business, doing it differently next year? You're going to have conversations sooner rather than later than wait till January 1 to start doing these things, right? What is the diversity measure of your network? If you haven't been paying attention, there's a lot going on in the world, people, all right? And if we're not answering this question about who you surround yourself with, you individually, that is a question mark. You need to start looking at that for yourself, right? How are you getting information about the world in which you live, right? And I could tell you this, your clients or your donors are not the only people. There's a broader group of people out there, all right? So I know all of you do that already. So those aren't the people I'm talking about. We have to go beyond that. And are you courageous enough to abandon the past? All of you are very skilled. All of you have practices that you are comfortable in using and want to use, but being able to change and adapt is an emotionally intelligent behavior. All right, and so those things not just help us in our life, they actually do help our organizational needs as well. I really zoomed through all that because I wanted to make sure I gave you some substantive information about EI that wasn't just my feelings about it, but actual facts. See what I did there, everybody? See what I did? What are your thoughts about what you just heard? And then are there any questions I can answer on some of the what's? Because I don't want you to leave feeling like you didn't get a good tip in terms of that, if that's what you wanted. What are you thinking? Christine, I saw you do like an amen or something. What was going on?
I was actually trying to pause because I can be a lot and I didn't want to talk too much. So the question about diversity, I said amen when you really kind of pointed it at the individual. I think it's easy when you're in an organization or even like in the Rotary. Okay, so I joined this diversity and inclusion committee of the Rotary and we're starting one at work, but to really kind of pointedly say, it's almost like the self-management before you can really truly lead, right? So how am I reflective of my values in my own universe? And if I'm not doing it myself, then how can I expect to move anything anywhere outside of that? So starting at home is kind of what got the hallelujah amen out of me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I wanted to share that, it seems, man, you say things in such a simple and matter-of-fact way. So everything is different. Duh, we know this, right? But that means that everything we're doing, just because we've always done it, it's got to be different. And I think knowing it and doing it are two different things. And so the idea of course, a year-end appeal goes out because a year-end appeal goes out every year. Okay, well, maybe, and maybe we didn't need to, or maybe we needed to really reconfigure and re-envision that. But now there's the opportunity to re-envision how we engage people after they get it. And so that's kind of piqued my curiosity, and I've got some planning to do, which is exciting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. And I just think that innovation is key.
Mhm.
And those who are taking care of their feelings are willing to examine it, right? If you've got fear that you're running up against a deadline of raising money and you're like, well, I'm not going to change because I know I can guarantee this much and I don't want to have to learn something new. That's driven by fear. That's not your values. If your values is innovation or thinking outside the box, right? I love when people get together and they say these things about their organization and I'm like, where's the behavior? Like, I didn't see you ever think outside the box, right? So like, I love that. I love that, be able to examine that and ask new questions. I think that's great. At the same time, while taking care of how you feel about it and to get yourself in order, I think is so critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the part where you talk about, ignoring what you've done in the past and move forward. What can you do differently? How can you do it differently? What can you do to challenge your donors and yourself and your staff to present differently? I really like that part a lot. And I think that's what we all have to do because of COVID-19. We all have to do things differently and really, try to appeal them in different ways.
That's right. One of the things when I was fundraiser in higher education, one of the things that I was trained on was there needed to be at least 12 to 17 points of goodwill before you ask somebody for money. And I know it's hard right now to think about, Mike Sgro, you want me to do 12 to 17 points of goodwill with individuals right now? Embrace social media. If you have not embraced social media, that's going to help you with a lot of those goodwill bites. All right. And I know not all donors are on social media, but guess what? People hear about stuff through Facebook. It seems to be, like 3 billion people are on it. And I struggle when working with nonprofits who don't celebrate social media, digital marketing, and sort of throw themselves all in it. You're missing a chance, you know. So one of my takeaways for that, again, for doing something different, is to create a Facebook event called your year-end giving. All right, or call it whatever you want, but it be 12/31/20, and start sharing that. Okay, you can use Facebook events as milestone placeholders. And so for me, using something like that will just help recognize that it's your year end and start sharing information. And as people subscribe to that event, as you post to that event, they're getting a little red notification, right? Your goal using empathy is to put your organization on the brain of many people every single day. That's the 12 to 17 times I'm talking about. Okay, and digital media could be an asset to you. And I know a lot of organizations really feel strongly about like, but we're really accurate about what we share, and it's got to be proofed, and it's got to be, you know, high production value video. Okay, well, do you have a lot of capacity for all that, or do you want to raise some money? Right? It doesn't have to be high. Some of the best things that get produced that go viral are simple, beautiful, heartfelt things. Right? It doesn't have to be this glossy magazine that you put online and you know, tout as, look at this glossy magazine. It doesn't have to be all that, right? The new normal is not going to need all that. All right. People have generous hearts. And I see examples of it every single day. We just got to connect with people. We just got to connect. And again, when we have increased emotional intelligence and we're taking care of our own internal experience, you're going to have more capacity to do some of the things I'm talking about, because it won't feel like effort. It won't feel hard, even though it might be new. Other questions or thoughts? Danielle, you look like you were about to say something.
No, I just thought that was a really good idea to do a Facebook event. And that's something I might do for the Hope Appeal now, because it ends the 31st, and then invite our constituency on Facebook to that event, and then post all the thing. Like we have a Hope Appeal video. We have a bunch of other social media videos that are coming out, and post them to that event. So that was just like a little light bulb that went off. And I know Christine's got her wheels turning too. I can see it on her face about
I'll mention this one all the time too. All of you have boards. All of you have vibrant staffs or minimal staffs, doesn't really matter. Facebook fundraising is easy, and you get all the money. I did a Facebook fundraiser for my birthday this year. Last year was ACR Health. This year was the zoo. And I was thrilled to hand over a $3,600 check to the zoo.
Amazing.
Right? And I didn't, 50 of it was mine, right? But like the rest came from the generosity of people, right? So all of you have board members. Expectation, would you be so kind to do a birthday fundraiser and make us your charity, right? Again, we got to start. I feel like nonprofits wait too long to do the thing. Like they want to see it proven before they start doing it. And I want all of you to do the next new thing. All right. Be the first to do the new thing. Like that's going to be cool. Be the bucket challenge people, right? But not the bucket challenge. Like what's the next thing, right?
Everybody wants
to do it, right?
Everybody wants the ice bucket challenge.
Yeah, that's right. But like create that for your community. What makes sense? And again, when we're stressed out, we don't have capacity to sit and do that. We wouldn't do that, right? Because there's just no room for that. So really, if you don't hear anything else today, think about taking care of yourself, which sounds selfish, but it's actually self-full. As my good friend Ileana Van Zant says, it's self-full. We have to keep our cup full, and then what comes out of it, she says, what comes out of it is for y'all, and what's in the cup is mine, right? So that's my secret. People ask me all the time, how do you stay so, whatever this is? And I say to them, I keep myself full. And that's not arrogance. That's practicing good, emotional, intelligent practices. I only can give what I have. And if I don't have it to give, it's time for me to make sure I have it. Right. And so when we develop that as a habit, you'll be able to do it more successfully. But it isn't a switch. I wish it was, and I wish it was a pill. It's not that either. And it's not buttons on the side of our head. It takes some effort and some practice, but then once you have the muscle, it's there, right, Will? Will is very good at this. We've talked a lot about this.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's all I'm going to say on that matter. Will's just great. I just love Will. Who else? Any other thoughts? Ashley, Tim?
I've been taking a whole bunch of notes and I'm still kind of processing because I feel like at every point in your presentation, I was like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, that makes sense. One of the things that I really loved was, you know, when you were talking about that discernment process, because I feel like so often, well, not so often, but often something happens and I get frustrated or, I feel bad, right? And I recognize that I'm feeling bad. And then I have to take that step back and be like, okay, I'm feeling bad, but what is it? It's not just bad. Like, what is it that I'm actually feeling? And, I really appreciate this presentation because I feel like the more that, like you said, we can strengthen that emotional intelligence muscle, the faster we can move through that discernment process, because sometimes it can be so distracting. You're trying to get something done and you have this whole to-do list and something happens and then suddenly it's like, oh, now I have to deal with this and I'm not feeling well enough, emotionally well enough to tackle these things because I have all of this stuff going on. So, I think like for me, that's just one of the really things that like I knew intrinsically, but it's really helpful just to kind of hear it reinforced that yes, like the more we work on this, the faster we can move through this and the more effective we can be.
That's right. Thank you for Ashley. And, I want you to leave with this thought of that your task list has to get done, but next to your task list of the what's is your how list. Okay. Everything I talked about was about how. I didn't talk about the what's. I talked about how. The how is involving you and your colleagues, right? And the skills needed for that are emotional intelligence. The skills needed for fundraising are those other skills that you all already have. So I'm not helping you with the actual fundraising. All right. What I'm helping you is your how and how to navigate a very turbulent world and how to take care of your feelings with the habits, not actually therapy, but actual habits that give you the emotional plumbing so that you can stay resilient. When we don't take care of this stuff and we only rely on self-care activities, if and when we get to it, that's why we need therapy, because we don't have that system in place. And then it's going to feel traumatizing to deal with so much, right, in any organization. And so avoiding trauma is before you even get to that step, right? Because we have over medicalized pain in this country. All right. There's a pill. It started with restless leg syndrome. This is my own political commentary. Restless leg syndrome, and then you got a pill for that. And now it's happened with our skills, right? Folks want things fast and easy, and they want a prescription for stuff. Well, what I'm talking about takes effort, but once you have the effort and the habit down, it's yours to keep. You don't have to, go back to the doctor, so to speak. You've got it.
No refills needed.
No, that's right.
No refills needed, exactly.
That's right. That's what I say to all my clients at the end of their experience. No more refills. You got it. You got it. You're cured. No, everyone is healthy the way they are.
Are we ever done with you, Michael? I don't think so.
I don't know. I know, Will. I don't think so.
We have to support you. You got to help us all. So there you go.
Anything from you, Tim, before we go?
I guess I'm just soaking in a lot of this. This is still all pretty new to me, even the fundraising piece. So there's a lot of things that I took notes on that I think were just like, maybe like Christine said, eye-opening at times, thinking about like how we use social media and stuff. So some of the things that I'm learning, and I want to say thank you, I guess Ashley or whoever, that we record these. I've been able to go back and look at some recordings that I haven't been able to attend. And it's just full of information that really is inspiring me to do things different. And that's not to say that I'm doing things right, because I'm really learning what I'm not doing right, and inspired to make some changes. And some of that's across the agency. So this is a new position for our agency. It's a new position for me in terms of fundraising, fund development is part of what I'm doing. And so I just really appreciate the opportunity to learn, and we'll probably go back and watch this again when I need to, just to get more of the details.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great.
And remember too, none of you, there is no right or wrong in the work that you're doing. Hopefully you got some tools tonight to be more effective, right? And be a little bit more productive, because there's never, like, we don't ever arrive. There's not one thing. And with emotional intelligence, it's that emotional plumbing. We're not sure what's going to go through those pipes, right? But we just need to make sure the pipes are there and that there's not a clog. And all of us can do that work without preparing for what that thing is going to be. I say to people all the time, like, aliens, COVID, civil unrest, you name it, I'm ready. I'm ready, because my plumbing is there. I'll deal with it as it comes, you know,
Right.
and I'll be okay. I'll be okay, and we will all be okay. I guarantee it.
Yes, we will. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Everyone have a wonderful evening, and stay in touch. Feel free to reach out. Tim, reach out. Anyone can reach out. I do a lot of complimentary stuff. I do my emotional intelligence proper training, 4 weeks, 4 hours worth of training. Christine was in it. I did it monthly. 525 people from around the country participated. So exciting. We start that back up in January. So
Tim, it's really worth it. I will say it was
Send it to everybody, Michael. Send it to everybody.
4 weeks, right? I wanted 4 more, and it is nice to go back, Tim, just like you go back to videos. I've got my notes all written out, and I go back and I look at them. And it always triggers kind of this new, sometimes it's, I'm talking about an event that's not going to happen anymore, and that's just on my mind. And then when I go back and look at these notes, it'll be the perfect little outline that I did that's like, oh, aha, I know who I need to call for this and how we're going to navigate this together. And it's great. So sorry.
Don't be sorry.
But
All right. Bye, everybody. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael, so much. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.